that one? Oh, hang on. I think James is just turning the video on, so. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for attending. It seems quite a full attendance. There's just one awaited who I think it will be here shortly. We have a guest as well, and I'm afraid I don't know. We have more than one guest. Well, all right, several guests. We'll announce your names, or perhaps Stephen can introduce you a bit later then. So first item on the agenda is apologies for non-attendance.
Through you, Chair, we have apologies for non-attendance from Councillor Russell Roberts.
Thank you. Any notifications of requests from members of the public to address the meeting?
There are none, Chair.
Okay. Draw your attention to declarations of interest. You're asked to declare any interest and the nature of that interest if there's any item under consideration at this meeting. Chair's announcements. The meeting is being webcast and you're asked to use your microphone. And as this is the final scheduled panel meeting in the municipal year, I'd like to thank you all for your work during this year. Perhaps I'll see you again next year. Perhaps we don't know yet. So, but thank you very much for your hard work. Now we have 5 sets of minutes to go through. I think it's probably unnecessary to go through them each individually, but perhaps if we can just say the 2 for the confirmation hearing on the 11th of January, if anyone's happy with those. The panel meeting on the 2nd of February and the 2 public and private ones on the 2nd of February. Obviously, if you've got any item that's on the confidential side, if you can indicate that in case we need to go into private session to discuss it. But otherwise, everyone happy with all of those minutes? Okay, thank you very much. Do I need to sign those? I'll do it. I'll do it a bit later. Yeah, it'll take ages. Okay, next item is the Northamptonshire response to recommendations of the HMI CFRS inspection on vetting misconduct and misogyny in the police service, and I'd like to ask the Commissioner, who's I think supported by one of his colleagues.
Very good afternoon, everybody. Lovely to see everyone. Such a beautiful afternoon. I should waffle for a second, because partly because Nikki's just rushed out to get in my desire to rush into the building with Winston and Pauline. I left my glasses in the car, so you know that. But thankfully, I'm not that bad that I can't fake it to make it. But you see, I paused for a little, just enough time to allow Councillor Andre Gonzalez de Savage to come in. I've waffled enough to let you get into the building. So, Madam Chairman, as we all know, the general public expect and of course deserve the highest standards of behaviour and integrity from all our police officers. And it's vital that we do all we can to identify and root out unacceptable behaviour. As the Chief Constable explained to the panel, our vetting procedures need to be robust and effective. The force have shown admirable leadership and resolve in this matter, and have provided additional investment to the Chief Constable to provide both resources and a more effective vetting management software system. This will help to ensure we can attract and retain excellence while having the ability to remove individuals who fall short of the standards expected of them as police officers. The report set out today in front of you provides you with an overview of the work the force has delivered on this matter under Op Admiral. and we're joined by Deputy Chief Constable Ivan Balhatchett and Detective Chief Inspector Liz Wilcox, who will actually take you with a more detailed overview on their work and answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Chair. I'm Balhatchett, Deputy Chief Constable for Northamptonshire Police. Within my role, I've also got the responsibility for professional standards within Northamptonshire Police. And as we all know, policing nationally has been rocked by the tragic murder of Sarah Everard, but then also numerous different reports of discipline and crime relating to police officers and police perpetrators. What I needed to ensure in Northamptonshire Police is that actually we were investing in this, and Liz will introduce herself in a minute. Liz and her team have been put in place, and we are doing a review of everything to do with professional standards within Northamptonshire Police. That includes historic, non-recent reports, criminal investigations, our vetting, our discipline procedures, how many we have in our professional standards department, and also doing numerous focus group surveys from staff to get their views about how they feel culture is and how they're treated. We're also working on and making sure that we give officers and staff who are victims as well internally confidence to report, whether it's confidential or otherwise, and we have the right people to investigate and take those allegations seriously. We also want to give the public the confidence that they can report any wrongdoing by police officers. We probably know we're used to policing in general having high confidence levels amongst the public. That has been hit badly recently, especially for women and girls, and it's our mission to actually show in Northamptonshire about what we're doing, rooting out those who shouldn't be in the police force, because we do have some of them, and you know, we want to do all we can to actually, like I say, give trust back, the public back into Northamptonshire Police. But Liz has been leading this work for me, and we'll just give more of a detailed overview on the work. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Liz Wilcox. I am a DCI at Northants now. My background, I have to admit, is I did do 11, 12 years in the Metropolitan Police. I'm aware of the issues that they have. I've read the Casey report in detail, and obviously have some lived experience there. I have a crime background, and I've moved over to do this Operation Admiral work so that we can have a fresh set of eyes, myself and my team, looking at professional standards, misconduct, crime and corruption in Northamptonshire Police. So it's a different system sometimes. We're looking at conduct rather than crime, but it helps that we have an investigatory background, and we're quite objective. So we are actually, aside from the professional standards team, so we have got an element of independence here in what we're looking at. So we did pick up the HMI report, which I know that you've all seen. It's in the report that you were all given. Within that, of all of the recommendations, there were 28 that were specific to police rather than Home Office, College of Policing. Of those 28, we have so far discharged all of them. And the one that is, we call amber, so not quite finished yet, is actually reliant on changes in legislation and codes of practice to allow us to use the Police National Database for different things than it allows us to now. But when I say we have discharged all of them, we have. But we see that very much as a starting point, not as a finishing point. We have hit the standards that we have been required of us, but we think that we have further work to do to improve and enhance the public service and also safety within our organisation. So to take you through that HMI report, and I won't take you through all the numerous recommendations, I'm sure you wouldn't appreciate that, but just to give you some insight into what we've done. And the Commission has already mentioned vetting. So we have done working with the vetting team, but giving some additional independence and oversight, looked at some of our vetting systems. We are on the front foot in some aspects. We've got a new vetting system called Core Vet, which allows records to be made of information that we store so that we can retrieve it quickly, see what we've got, understand it, and use it to view the bigger picture rather than just having information in isolation held on separate spreadsheets and antiquated systems. So some of our recommendations have been discharged because we've been given that system and some investment has been made. In terms of vetting moving forward, we are working with HR to make sure that the systems are joined up. Vetting is one system, but we are looking at making sure that we're speaking with HR and occupational health so that the right people are getting in, so that references are checked as they should be, and there's a joined up approach, because sometimes with silo working, things are missed. So in terms of other recommendations, one of the big ones was recommendation 28. Now, when the report that you will have heard of, the HMI report into vetting, misogyny and misconduct came out, certain forces had been inspected, and they reviewed 3 years worth of their misconduct. And all of the forces that weren't subject to that inspection had to do the same. And we're on the front foot with that. We've actually completed our review of 3 years worth of misconduct within Northamptonshire Police. And it's been myself and 2 members of my team that are detective sergeants that have gone through all of that to make sure that investigations are thorough, they've been conducted properly, and we haven't missed any risk. Now, overall, those investigations have been to a good standard. 3 years worth of
Sorry.
Oh. Does anyone like the sound of their own voice? So we've so those have been completed, and overall we do think that they are of a good standard. We have throughout the process identified risk, and we've set up processes to deal with that risk to make sure that moving forward, anything that was an opportunity that has been missed, we're now picking up on. And I'm sure you can appreciate that there might be some sensitivities around some of that for the purposes of this meeting, but anything that's been identified, we are now making sure is dealt with by a panel that's headed by the DCC. Furthermore, that's the recommendation that we do that misconduct review and it's complete, but we're going to use that now to feed into a much wider piece of work. After viewing misconduct, we then went on to review crime, and we'll be reviewing corruption matters. And the end product will be us looking at all of them and making sure that the correct teams have got the correct investigations with the appropriate levels of staff, resources, capacity. And I know that there is an appetite to invest in that area of policing. We need it. Unfortunately, we have to accept it's a growth area. More complaints will come forward, more will need investigating. So we're looking at that to make sure that moving forward, we're effective and that we are robust. We have also, within our team, picked up some of the work in conjunction with other people, picked up some of the work around the historic data wash. Sorry, I'm conscious of using police lingo here, but nationally, the police force are conducting an exercise whereby every serving member of staff and all police officers are subject to a P&D check. P&D is a system whereby we can get records from all across the country. So if we have had an officer, for example, that works in Northamptonshire that has been arrested on a night out in Brighton and not told us, and their force haven't worked out they're a cop because they haven't admitted it in custody, all of that information will come back to us. That's a big exercise. It's ongoing. The deadline to complete that is the end of September. I think that we're on the front foot with that as well. Not that I'm going to offer any final dates today, but we will certainly be finished by September, and I think before then. So we don't really have any solid updates, apart from to say, obviously, our Commissioner and Chief Officer team have all been checked, so you are safe with them today. So moving on then to what else we're doing. We've talked a lot about misconduct. I've mentioned that we're doing crime reviews so that we can review the appropriate units. We have actually looked at 3 years worth of criminal allegations against our officers and our staff. We have done an initial review. It needs some more work. We can say by and large that all of the investigations were to a good standard, but we have spotted areas for improvement. So we are looking, and I've started implementing measures whereby our crime investigators and conduct investigators work together, because there'll be overlapping issues, just to make sure that nothing's missed, information is shared, and we've covered all avenues. We've also seen during these investigations, and it's pertinent to some of our partner agencies that work within the Commissioner's office, that there is potential to improve victim care in cases where people have been subject to police officer perpetrated abuse. VCOP has been followed in all cases, but that's a minimum standard. What we're seeing is, and understandably, people's confidence in police when they've been abused by a police officer is low, and they need good victim care. They need help to give them the confidence to speak up and go through with these cases. So we're linking in with Voice, who are an organisation that offer expert victim care and a wraparound service to make sure we can share information with them that allows them to give them that care. So, for example, we've noticed that previously, because some crime reports may be cloaked if they involve high-profile people or police officers, it just caused a bit of a barrier. So we've ironed all of that out. We're being more transparent with organisations like Voice to make sure they've got what they need to help people that are making allegations against police officers. Looking even further than crime, misconduct, investigations, victim care, this is actually about what happens at the front door, if you like. We can root out bad cops, but I think that it's equally important to stop them joining in the first place. So the next phase, and we've started some of it, will be working with our recruitment and HR team to know what adverts are they putting out there? What are people being told? What is the standard that is being set from the off? I know that during COVID, some police forces stopped doing face-to-face interviews, and that dropped away, and some forces didn't reinstigate that process. Northampton haven't done that. We've kept the face-to-face interviews, but what more can we do to make sure we're getting the right people and setting the right standard from the start? So that's something that we think is really important. Once officers join, we have regulations that we can use to exit people safely and quickly if they're not appropriate for the job. It's known as Regulation 13, but we're looking at how we apply that. It looks like we apply it fairly. We're looking at how we can apply it more robustly and quickly to make sure that people that are unsuitable for the job are removed from the service as soon as possible. So I think that's quite a wide range of work to give you an overview of. I will happily take, and as I'm sure the boss will, questions if anyone wants to ask.
You said that about...
Yeah, she did indicate to me that...
I was going to say a few things first.
Yeah. If you could let Stephen come in first, please. Yeah.
I did.
Yes, I know, but the Commissioner would like to follow up.
I particularly want to commend the work that Northamptonshire Police has done, particularly Ivan and Liz. And you know, it is worth reflecting because you get different bits. Northamptonshire Police has kicked a number of individuals out of its organisation recently. And one of the things that helps to give me the confidence is where those disclosures have come from. So they've come from internally, and that is really, really important because that says not in our name. That is saying that we literally the absolute large majority of our organisation are dedicated public servants who want to make Northamptonshire safer. As in any organisation, there will be a few errant individuals who want to abuse their position. But the real confident piece is that actually they're being called out by their own team. And that is really, really important. And I say that because at the start of the week, I was out as part of some of the work we were doing for the Northamptonshire having the highest number of police officers ever, and I was actually in Wellingborough Community. By the way, I might mention that a few times today, the highest number that we've ever had. Because I do think it's also worth mentioning that this investment, this time and effort was really, really important to make sure that you know that the new ones we brought in, you can never be 100%, but actually we didn't compromise on quality, that we made sure we invest in vetting to do those things. But I was talking to a former police officer from the Met, who now works for us in Northamptonshire. And so actually the great thing is to kind of go out and just talk directly, no disrespect to anyone else, but actually rather than get it in a report to actually, and actually it was comforting. I can honestly tell you the stories she told me of what was going on in the Met, quite frankly, is terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. And the young man, photographer that come out with me said he sounded like something that was from the 1950s and it's still going on today. But it was comforting to me when she said nothing is like that is going on in Northamptonshire. She's there at the coalface. She's seen the absolute worst of it. And actually some of the stories she had to tell were quite frankly horrific. So all of those kind of give me confidence. I think it's also worth mentioning, Nikki took the decision to make sure all of our staff went through the national data wash. You will, Liz kindly mentioned there, as a PCC, I'm exempt from it, but to show leadership in it, I think it was important that I went through it as well. I wasn't worried, but it's always still very relieved to know that someone hasn't done something in your name that you find there. So I just want to kind of give that context. They're never going to be perfect, but the important thing is that people are coming as a consequence either of Liz and Ivan's work proving it, that there's issues with somebody, but also that people are actually being disclosed from internal, because it actually says in on it. And that's the real sign of a very, very healthy organisation that say, you know, we've got very high standards and we want them to be met. I apologise for interrupting. I'm sure we'll now take questions from
Mrs. Shields, would you like to?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Sorry about that. I have listened carefully about your comments about the vetting, the review, the 48, the 28 recommendation that you have implemented and so forth. You are aware, of course, only last week on BBC, they were saying at Bedford, a corrupt police officer is being removed from Bedford, but it's been transferred to Hertfordshire. And my question here is that as the law stands at the moment, you cannot, or the chief constable cannot sack a police officer. And therefore, when you say about Regulation 13, what does that mean exactly? Does it mean that those corrupt officers who are on full pay with pension and everything, and the taxpayers paying for it, carry on to be transferred from one police force to another? Or is this going to stop square and you're going to remove them? Because rightly so, your comment about how the public is feeling at the moment to regain the confidence is going to take a tremendous effort. And unfortunately, there is so many police officers who are good and work their socks off to do what they're supposed to do. But because of this, because of the law as it stands, and that has been quite explicitly explained on the news, people are wondering how is the Metropolitan Police, are they going to split up? Is the force going to change? Because it's like the Lawrence tomorrow. The Chief Constable is going to attend to this 30th anniversary. And we saw yesterday on the news about what happened, and she's quite clear about what she thinks about the force. She thinks nothing has changed. And I would like to have the reassurance that this transformation that it appears to be, that is going to tackle this once and for all. That is my concern. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll start and then I will hand over to Liz about Reg 13. So we invested in this team that Liz is leading, and there's no end date to it. And we're not just looking at HMIC recommendations or the case report. We have a tranche of work to ensure what you've just said, to get to a place where we're confident that we've done everything we can about getting rid of bad officers and staff, making sure our culture and behaviours are right, and also at the very beginning in terms of recruitment, the right people are coming into the organisation, and also the transferee bit. There have been problems in the past across the country of officers transferring who actually shouldn't have been allowed to transfer and shouldn't have been able to get into another force. And we're making sure that's being tightened up as well. I know the Home Secretary is looking at wider dismissal, who can dismiss, how does that work in terms of chief constables. I would just say that there's, if I simplify, there's two routes in terms of dismissal at the moment. You have panels chaired by independents, albeit members of Northamptonshire Police also sit on that with another colleague as well. The Chief Constable can sack officers on accelerated hearings. They're all public, and recently we've put 4 through to be considered for the Chief Constable. So it has to hit certain criteria, it has to hit certain threshold, but the Chief Constable can actually make dismissal decisions on them. But to try and reassure before I hand over to Liz, we said from the start, we were open about this and thought, we know we will have issues within Northamptonshire Police and bad people. This is our opportunity to actually invest and do something about this, and we won't stop until we assure ourselves we've got the right people. There is also now, just nationally, to let everyone know, if you are dismissed from a police force, you will go on a barring list, which is a national barring list that stops you from being able to work with or get into another police force ever again. But on the Reg 13 aspect.
So just to follow up there, so the Chief Constable, Regulation 13 is a separate mechanism. So as Mr. Balhatchett has said, accelerated misconduct, the Chief can sack people. Regulation 13 is for use on probationers. So within your first, it's usually 2 years of service. So if we can spot people that are not appropriate for the job, either because of their skills, because of their development, or if it's sometimes in misconduct matters, we can use Regulation 13 to exit them. That's a decision that the Chief Constable gets to make, and actually there is no right of appeal. And if you're dismissed through that, we also flag it so that then you won't be going and trying to join another force.
I had, sorry, did you want to?
I just wanted to add to that, because it's important. If someone's Regulation 13 out, it doesn't mean that they're corrupt. It can just mean that they're not competent. It's a performance mechanism. So I don't want anyone suddenly thinking just because someone's Regulation 13 out that they're all in terms of corrupt. That's important. I think the key piece underneath this, there is absolutely no complacency here. No matter how hard you try, you're talking about individuals who are going out of the way, like any form of kind of criminal intent. But the bit I kind of want to add, and I just, we have to be really careful with our language. So Northamptonshire Police is very clearly not the Met, and it doesn't have the issues in the same level of magnitude. I don't say that to excuse some, that there will be people in our organisation that we are trying to catch and stop. But the bit just around confidence, the confidence measures have continued to kind of edge up. And one of the one that I presented to you last time, before I raised the precept, we very carefully measured the confidence of the Northamptonshire public in Northamptonshire Police. And I don't mean this in a glib way, but I was quite surprised, given the financial pressure that the public are under, and it was only a very small percentage, but more people said they were prepared to pay more money for policing in Northamptonshire than previous years. Is a useful proxy just to kind of go, you know what, Northamptonshire Police is doing the right things and we're not suffering in terms of the same confidence. And there is a balance here of kind of, I talked to the Chief about it, about apologising on behalf of policing, because some of those things we have no control over, but also being honest about it so that our staff don't feel like they're beaten up, because, like I said, the large majority are fantastic, hard-working people who are really making a difference to people's life. It's always a very small cohort. And I'll just back as someone who sat on the College of Policing, where they brought in, so they manage a national barring list for exactly that reason. But that hasn't been in for very long. I was only on the college for the last 5 years. And actually, it was during that time. I don't mean to say that I brought it in or anything like that. What I was merely saying, it's only a recent thing. So policing is learning. Some of the challenges you've got are not unique to policing. I should probably talk about it a little later. Some have seen the HMIC report on culture from fire, and there's work to it. Some will have seen the terrible tragic death in the West Midlands at the hospital there, about someone in terms of, so there are bits about culture, vetting and all of those sorts of things. I just wanted to add that to it. Thanks.
Okay, I've got Councillor Brown next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We've heard a lot of reassuring things, but I'd just like to check what safeguards are in place both in this process and in processes overall to prevent undue influence by senior officers, both generally and more specifically where allegations may be made against them or their fellow senior officers.
Okay, so in terms of the work we're doing, and Liz has already explained about the checks in terms of PND is going across every officer, including senior officers. And what we've got to do and what we are doing is working with staff and giving them the appropriate reporting routes, confidential or otherwise, investing in that so they're able to report to the right people, the resources that are trained, who know what they're doing. We've spoken about voice, making sure that actually if people aren't comfortable coming directly to police, there's a mechanism and route for that to be done in another way. So action can be taken. We're very aware that, you know, policing does work in a rank structure, doesn't it? And we know of past, you know, that it takes a lot for someone to come forward. We are, as I say, looking to give all the best routes we can and the confidence to victims and survivors and those who are subject to poor or appalling behaviours to be able to do that in confidence, knowing that something will be done about it.
Councillor Smith.
I was just going to finish to that. Thank you. Thanks, Liz. There's two bits there. One to give you assurance. We took the decision, which there's a team in my office that probably wished I hadn't made that decision, that we went with option 3 around complaints. So any complaint from the public has to go through my office, so it can't go in somewhere and kind of get lost, and that's important. But also at the same time and in tandem with this, to make sure that we uncovered it, we engaged Ipsos last year, and the report will be coming into us in May to do two things. One, as part of our wider VOG agenda, was to actually get from the people of Northamptonshire where they did or didn't feel safe. But also at the same time, we did some work where we emailed out from Ipsos, so independent of policing, and also for the fire service and from my office, to make sure anyone had been, on the receiving end of misogyny or inappropriate behaviour. So actually, we've got, if you like, an independent sense check. And again, in all of these things, there's always something else I'm sure you can do, but actually they give me a level of assurance that I feel confident of the direction that we're going in.
Okay. Councillor Smith, did you have a question?
Councillor Brown asked what I was going to ask. He's been reading my notes. So
okay. Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions, and in fact, if I just reel off the questions, then you can decide who's going to answer them. First of all is, when you look at the enormous amount of costs that actually, and I do appreciate it's an incredibly important area, but is this going to have any impact in your success with regards to policing within Northamptonshire? Because obviously when you listen to the amount of senior officers and so on and so forth, is it going to have any effect on that policing? Next one is with regards to how do we rate, and I'm probably it's a bit early to say, but how do we rate with regards to other forces of a similar size, forgetting the Met and all those sort of areas? And thirdly, are we going to do exactly the same with the fire service with regards to vetting and so on?
It definitely sounds like I should start on this one, shouldn't it? I was going to say, thanks. I think the first thing is around the point that you make in terms of confidence. Everything we do in all walks of life is absolutely around balance, but the fundamental tenet of policing is the public confidence that you have. And in some respects, I'll step back from this. You can never invest too much in it to make sure that that bond is not broken with the public. I genuinely believe we've got a healthy balance. I'm hoping we can hang on to Liz and her team, because she's highly popular at the moment with the work that's been done here in Northamptonshire compared to what's going on in other forces. And I'm not here to kind of go, they're not doing it. Each has got their own approach. We've taken a very proactive approach to make sure we do it, that we do it right. And I think that'd be my bit about in terms of other size of forces. It's hard because in some respects you could very easily, it's a bit like crime figures, isn't it? If you've got a crime figure, you can manage the crime figure down. So if your force isn't proactive, you go, there isn't much crime going on because you're not going and looking for it. You could actually kind of go, well, we're actually kicking out more individuals than, say, a relative force to us. I personally see that as a good thing, because actually we're going and we're looking for them and we're proactively moving them. Now, in theory, you want over time, and that's the bit, that measure to end up to actually be lower. But that would be kind of where I genuinely believe we're in a decent place when I compare us to some of the others. I'll let them add any other comments they want, and I'll come back on the fire service if I may.
Yeah, I'd just back that up. So as well as the work with Ipsos, we've done other focus groups and surveys with staff. There's been many reports in terms of statistical reports around misconduct and that kind of thing. We don't come out as an outlier in any shape or form, but I'm not saying that tells the whole story. To reassure, what this work is doing is looking at various aspects across behaviours, misconduct, criminality, that will enable us to know as an organisation about where we are. What I am confident is, though, is to repeat what I said before, the vast majority of police officers and police staff in Northamptonshire Police, brilliant people doing amazing work for the public every day. That doesn't make us complacent, but yeah, that's what I want to add.
And just you raise a good question. Now, it is there is an important difference between police and fire. Police the police have the power to decide that someone, they want to detain someone of their liberty. Thankfully, a firefighter doesn't. So the burden and the level is quite different. However, both absolutely rely on public confidence and quite frankly, as a blue light service, are in terms of the highest in terms of trust. The thing I would say to you, Northamptonshire Fire and Rescue, and I might get the year wrong, but for the best part of 15 years has been DBS checking everybody that comes in. So that's an important step that was taken a long time ago. We're actually going back and looking at what that means in terms of, and for those that you all look like you've had a good night's sleep, so you probably didn't catch it. Yesterday, there was a question around a ministerial statement around actually support it. We're already doing it, but I think there's more work we could do in terms of doing it. And there's some wider work that we need to do as part of the culture piece, and that was part of the reason we brought in a new chief fire officer. One of his top mandates is to do something about making sure there was a healthy, vibrant culture that people kind of want to work in. And that's, I think, the nice advantage that has also helped Northamptonshire Police is, yes, we have the highest number of police officers that we've ever had. That means we've got just under 700 police officers that are new to us. That helps you to bring about a new kind of culture and stuff like that. And there are differences in even things, it wasn't that long ago, probably would be unheard of that domestic violence was even something policing cared about. It wasn't that long ago, in tens of years, where people kind of go, oh, it's just a domestic violence incident, and would let it kind of pass by. So also as society kind of moves on, we're in the right direction. So I hope that gives you some reassurance on both fronts.
Ms Woodhouse, you had a question.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you, Liz and Ivan, for that. Welcome as well, Liz, to Northampton. It's normally the other way around, people going off to the Met. So here you are. Outside of that, I just wanted to say, I understand the work that's been going on. And when I read the report, my heart literally sank, literally. And I'm not just talking about the police, I'm talking about the fire service as well. And for me, what I would like to know, yes, I know the work's going on and it's based on the back of what's coming off the report, but what are you doing differently in Northampton in terms of being able to develop a force area and support the workers so that we can have some reassurance that it's not just a piece of work that's on the back of this report, but something that is developing change behaviours along the way. So what's been different? And the second thing I'd like to say is, for me, I read stuff and I like to kind of try and bring some kind of solution to it. And so for me, is there any room, is my other question, in terms of when, for example, a lot of our new recruits are at the university. Is there any room in terms of building in some kind of modular in their training development from the outset? So, yeah, I think I've said.
Thank you. So I think to start with, you asked about what's different, and it was about a long-term view. What's the legacy here? What's actually going to change? So I think that what is different is, and I alluded to it at the start, is that HMI report for us is a starting point. This isn't a tick box. We've hit them all green, we're done now. Because if we're going to do that, then technically we've actually completed it. I think it's that long-term view, and there is an appetite for, once we have looked at how we deal with crime, corruption, misconduct, to change our teams and departments and staffing levels so that more is spent on that. And there was a question about costs earlier, but that is key because we police by consent. And if the public don't talk to us, then we're just stuck. And that is at the forefront for a good reason at the moment. And I know there's an appetite to invest in that. So what our team will be doing is, once these 3-year reviews have done into this area, that area, the other area, we're going to put them all together and say, which investigators have got the best skills to deal with this? Which method gives the public most confidence? Because I know from speaking to people that have made allegations in the past, there has been thoughts that coppers just investigate coppers on their own teams, in their own commands, which we're not doing, but you can see that public kind of opinion, and it stops people from coming forward. It stops people from supporting investigations. So we're actually going to look to change our operating model so that we can put investigations where they should be, put more staff into it, and see it as a really important area of policing. And not to say that it hasn't been dealt with, it's not been recognised as important in the past, but I speak as a detective. Everyone loves investigating your robberies, your burglaries, you want to go off to your murder teams, but really this is key to policing. So we need that investment, we need people to recognise it as important as it is, and that is the end game for one of the end objectives for our operational work. So I think that it will have legacy and there will be some real change there. And sorry, Ross, on your second point, I actually am a training SPOC as well, and I do have links at the university, and I'm working with our training department, the CI there, GAN, and that is something for consideration, actually. So we're looking at training and development of police officers, and I had looked at, in terms of recruitment, what do we tell people? Do we say on the advert from the outset, this is the stuff we don't tolerate? So if you think you're going to do this, then you're joining the wrong organisation. I think there's room for that, but actually, I think there's room for what you've just mentioned. So that is definitely something that I'll pick up and explore.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Maxwell.
Can I just add something to that, because it's come up a couple of times. This is an area we will remain committed to and continue to invest in. It's crucial to that public confidence. We've also been able to, if you like, I'm not saying overinvest, because I'm sure no matter how much money we give you, Liz, it'll never be enough. However, it is worth noting, at the same time as we've invested in that, we have achieved the largest number of police officers Northamptonshire has ever seen, with an increase in representation and from ethnic and diverse perspective, and also from a female perspective. So actually, it's just a demonstration that you can do more than just one thing at a time, and it's important that we build on those.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Well, I think basically what's happened is, over the years, particularly more recent than before, is that every day there is an incident, whether it's in this county, another county, or somewhere else. It's not going away. And I think the public are not sure whether or not you're really taking them serious. And I feel that whilst you're trying very hard to do what you are doing, which is great, I still feel that people are not necessarily coming forward in the way I'd like to see them coming forward. I think that they are apprehensive about if they report something, how is it going to be viewed? And I think somehow along the line, you've got a massive job trying to get over this issue. Not so much, with younger people as well. I'm talking about teenagers who think, if they report something to the police, are they really going to take it seriously? Are they taking it seriously? And so I do think you've got a lot of work to do on that front. I think equally, I'm pleased in a way that everybody's going to be checked. It's a bit like teachers. You can't go and teach in another school unless you've actually got a DBS and so forth and so on. I like to think that somehow the checks are not only for working in schools or in your uniform, but it's also in your leisure time, because in your leisure time, you're still vulnerable. You're still out there thinking that you could actually maybe be sidetracked. All the time you have to make sure that you're sort of clear and so forth. So what aspect are you doing to make sure that the public in Northamptonshire are feeling confident now?
I think I'd just like to go first, Councillor. I would just ask us all to be careful in terms of kind of generalisation. So one of the key pieces is to make sure, in terms of, I could have taken, I'm sure you didn't mean it that way, that there's no confidence and people aren't coming forward in the way you put that. One of the reasons that we are where we are in terms of resource, in terms of people, bodies, that allows us to move on to, if you like, say we doubled the number of police officers in neighbourhood policing, and we're going to do it again. That tie with the community, that approachability, that confidence, and there's no one thing, whether it's down from the, the youth team or the ACE workers or the neighbourhood team or the Flare app or the Safer Street. There are so many things when you actually start to put them all together around that confidence. But core to that is absolute trust. I know the Chief's also interested to know, actually, could he broadcast some of the hearings that we're talking about, these disciplinary ones. So actually, so what we can do what we can to enhance the thing. I just want to be careful with the generalisations though, please.
I think with, yeah, don't get me wrong, this is going to be a challenge for many, many months. And you talked about incidents being reported in the press nationally. And the Commissioner of the Met, I know, has said already that facing much more bad news is coming for a long time to come. Legitimacy is so important to policing, it's core to it. We are confident, and hopefully today from the paper and what we've explained is we're doing everything we can in this area to reassure the public about our officers and staff and how, you know, what they're held to account, their standards of behaviour. We'll say again, vast majority are great people doing great work for the public. We do need to get fined and get rid of the bad ones. And at the right point as well, we'll obviously be, you know, telling the public more about what we have done and what we are doing around this. But what we want to reassure again is this isn't about just a report, however difficult they are to read, and they're really difficult to read. They're horrible to read, actually. This is, you know, doing everything we can to ensure we've got a great organisation, which we have, with great people in it, and we root out those who shouldn't be in it, and we don't let those in who destroy that legitimacy of public confidence.
I was just going to follow up on the fact that, do you think sometimes when you name and shame somebody, you know, you actually bring them to book, and you name the person who's actually going to court or whatever it is, just supposing that person happens to be innocent, do you not think sometimes that you might have named somebody who hasn't actually committed the crime that they've actually done?
There's strict rules on what we report and when we name and in what circumstances. You know, part of the criminal justice system is ensuring that, you know, the right things and the right outcomes are made for people, and we've got to, we rely on that.
There's a hot debate on it because there's actually just one change wording in the College of Police and Guidance, which has attracted an astounding amount of debate. And it was, I think, it was moving from should or shall or something. Liz will probably correct me. And it was kind of to help address those issues because you're right, innocent until proven guilty in terms of guilt. I mean, it's like people say, you know, if you're arrested. Now, to be fair, you're not arrested for the fun of it, but it doesn't mean they're definitely guilty. It might be to facilitate policing to an investigation, and you might have to arrest to gain access in terms of information. But none of those powers are used lightly.
I think in terms of telling the public and getting the confidence, the sort of thing we're talking about today, where you're saying, you know, what you're doing, and obviously this is all webcasts, etc. But you know, not everyone gives up their time to watch a PCP meeting. But you know, getting that out there, that not necessarily getting out that you've caught someone and, you know, got rid of them, but the fact of the work that you're doing is important to let people know what is being done. Councillor McGee would like to.
No, thank you for that, Councillor, because I think, Madam Chairman, because I think that's the point. You know, they've got very valuable work to do this afternoon. But rather than me sit here and kind of give you a report, I wanted you to hear firsthand, because I hope that you'll kind of go away from here and actually, when you hear some of those comments, you can kind of go, I feel we're on the right path. And I think the challenge for all of us. There is no complacency. You can never 100% guarantee it. However, you can actually see we're going over and above to do our very best to do it.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Thank you for being here today, particularly to Liz. I have to say it's absolutely brilliant to see a strong woman taking on a job like this. It's really brilliant. Thank you. It's inspiring. Something that I want to sort of bring up is we've had a lot of examples of the really extreme levels of what goes on, which is obviously very important and terrifying, particularly as a young woman actually who uses the towns and streets of Northamptonshire, maybe even in the evenings or when it's dark. It's harrowing, but actually not everyone is going to act to that extreme. There's going to be incidents of subconscious bias, which actually, as a woman in 2 professional jobs, I've come across all the time. It's relentless, and you're told to change how you speak. You're told to educate them rather than pull them up. All of these kind of completely tedious, frustrating things that I've come across. It's harrowing that this is quite a recent thing, but I'm glad that hopefully by the time I get to the end of my professional career, things may be different. But what do you do in terms of those members who don't need to be completely Reg 15, but instead need a bit of education and subconscious bias training?
So, yeah, that's a great question, because you're absolutely right. Thankfully, not everybody goes on to commit extremes of behaviour, but it is a continuum, and if a culture allows it to happen, that's when these instances happen. So it's about cultural change as well. So we have because of the sheer volume of work and what we need to achieve, the Op Admiral team is focused on the crime misconduct elements, but we link in with, there's another team within Northamptonshire Police called Stronger Together that focuses on the cultural issues, and they will provide unconscious bias training, they will provide advice, they'll make suggestions. We also work alongside professional standards. Well, professional standards, I've seen pockets of really great work going on there. And within what they're trying to achieve is recognising that actually sometimes people are good people that make mistakes. I'm not talking about offending, but I'm talking about saying something they might not have thought through, or just not knowing. So we've got the Stronger Together team that looks at cultural issues. There are staff associations. They have things like living libraries where people can come and talk about their experience, and people listen and be able to ask questions without being judged for asking questions. And then on the professional standards front, there is an approach whereby if somebody has not lied, been dishonest, tried to cause harm, if it's a genuine mistake, they will give words of advice. But words of advice sounds not very helpful. Guidance, reflective practice, and identify areas for improvement. And it's a great question, because you're right, those extremes of behaviour come from cultures that allow them to happen. So it needs to change all the way down.
Thank you very much for the assurance. Councillor Gonzalez de Savage.
Sorry, Assistant Chief Constable, want to add something there?
No, I was just going to say that, part of all of this work as well, and, the internal comms are led by the Chief Constable about the importance around this and how important he takes it. It's being able to give people the confidence to call out behaviours, to stop things, because it does need different approaches, and it does need to be, and things are at different scales, aren't they? But it is trying to, back to the culture piece, isn't it? About making it an organisation that people feel comfortable to appropriately challenge when something offends them, or something said wrong, or there's a behaviour that's not right. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have a couple of points to raise. One of them is that we shouldn't look upon this as being in isolation to the rest of the world, because quite clearly every organisation has a need to look at its people on a regular basis, and quite clearly attracting, training and retaining the best quality staff is absolutely essential. The police force is really the same as every other organisation of a large number, except for the fact that it requires that trust, that confidence in the public, and it requires a two-way door, doesn't it? It requires an opportunity to interact in such an important manner to ensure that our communities are safe and policing by consent, as we've already discussed earlier on today. The competency of those individuals who delivers the role of a police officer or fire officer in that respect has to be looked at very carefully, and that comes through standards and training throughout their career, and obviously throughout their experience level is so important to watch that. But we do know one thing, which is that Northampton Police is not in isolation either. And I placed a call to 999 101 the last week, and I know that the response that I received, and I know the response other people received, and I know that those interactions that people have. And unless you really are aware, as we all are in the room today, and I'm sure that plenty of people also watching, they're connecting with Northants Police. For them, they're connecting with the police. Now, whether we're over the border, whether we're using a mobile phone, we ring for the car, whatever the incident is from that point of view, it's the police, it's 999 the police. Obviously, if you're ringing from a mobile phone, you're asked which police force do you wish to speak with. It is really important that we have consistency, therefore, nationally, right across the board, to ensure that not just Northants stands out as a wonderful emblem of really looking internally at its own operations and its people, but absolutely everyone has confidence right across the county's borders. And that means the country nationally, that wherever they make contact with that 999 number, they're going to have the same consistent, tough approach to having the right people answering that incident, handling the incident, whatever it might be, advisory or response, however that might be. The other point, of course, is when they come across an officer, male, female, together, alone, whatever it might be. There are some fantastic examples of it going brilliantly and some others that haven't been. And I have one very recently where a lady was in Northampton, and it's important to raise it, had a disagreement with a friend who had the car keys effectively. It was a midnight scenario on Bridge Street. An adult lady, not a teenager from that point of view, they'd gone out for the evening economy to have a nice meal scenario. Something went wrong, disagreement. That individual was then left on her own, was approached by some youngsters who basically would like to have a bit of fun maybe. Thankfully, a police car was not too far away. Police car stopped. The lady felt very much at ease because the police car had stopped, and the police officers offered the lady a lift home. It was tremendous because it just came as like that halo effect. It was incredible. It immediately diffused that situation. The lady was taken home. She was incredibly grateful, tried to pay the officers money for the lift and all the rest of it. They wouldn't accept anything. And it was very reassuring. About midnight, thereabouts on a Friday evening. It is that sort of example which puts back that confidence in the police force. It's so important there. And it's very, very reassuring that we can root out the wrong people and have the right people delivering the service. We can't be complacent. There are always going to be issues. These are human beings we employ, not androids, not AI. Thankfully, although there's huge support in the back office end, I'm sure, from that. But we just need to have that human approach all the way throughout. And I commend the Chief Constable and his teams, and the two of you here today, for bringing us the data on that basis. And the Commissioner, for straddling both organisations, police, highest number of police that we have ever had in this county, we need to absolutely make sure we have the right people and root out those that really should be doing something else. I am very concerned that those who are rooted out under Regulation Rule 13 that might leave the police force in Northamptonshire, and they might not be able to join another police force in the country, might join another blue light service somewhere else. Could you give me reassurances that that's not possible? I ask that because they will use the skills as a transferable skill to another organisation. It might be voluntary. It might also be, more worryingly, something carrying another badge on a jacket, on a high-vis scenario. Absolutely. That then gives them the authority or pass to try and enforce. And we might find those individuals for different reasons getting back into the system where they have access to information, shared private data scenarios. We don't want those people in a role that requires vetting of any sort, anywhere. DBS, and I remember being involved as the Commissioner will know, with fire, and I have the utmost respect for them, but we have big organisations that need continuous looking at. The DBS check is absolutely of no value whatsoever on day 2, because it only tells you historically about that individual. We could all walk out here and create mass murder. And the Commissioner, who I'm absolutely sure won't do it, but at the very end of the day, none of that will be recorded, as we all know, on the DBS check. And I think it's really important, and I think it's a very big concern. It's not just Northampton Police, it's absolutely every organisation throughout the country that is exposed to this. And I've carried out I've had numerous DBS checks carried out on me for different roles that I've carried out, and I'm really happy with them, but I tell them it's completely invalid after I receive the certificate. It does absolutely nothing to give confidence to me. I'm sure it doesn't, in reality, the system would hopefully catch people quite quickly, but it doesn't do anything. It's not alive. It's a record of what you ate last week, or you did last year, or you did up to today that you've been prosecuted for. There must be a better check, and I think we need to raise this, and I know the Commission is very diligent at doing this, but there are other areas we must raise to ensure that we get a better system in place where your time and your fantastic, phenomenal skill sets are used in a much more timely, accurate, I mean, there is an AI program, and I know it exists, that can absolutely predict an individual from a character, from a perspective of what they've been involved in that scenario, about how they are a risk possibly to us, to an organisation. I'm not suggesting we use, something which is underhanded, but there are ways of putting profiles together and saying, actually, we ought to be looking a little bit more realistically with innovation and data and technology at those areas that would help you to prevent an individual getting to that point, rather than us saying, my gosh, we've just looked at another statistic. And Madam Chairman, we wouldn't want to go through a report that said an individual who was part of the organisation hadn't been caught or stopped in time, yet there were warning signals. Because I mean, I've read within this report, and I have read within the earlier reports, about individuals, we've seen individuals, scenarios where they've been expedited and they've ended up after complaints in a department that looked to complaints. I mean, that scenario no one would wish upon, but how can we prevent that from happening? Because prevention is going to be far more effective if we can, rather than dealing with the past. And you have the skill sets, I know, between the two of you and the departments of the police to try and absolutely influence the fact that we don't want to have people who are at risk. There are people at risk, absolutely, of falling into the traps of that. We don't want them going in and committing that offence, wherever it might be, and then you having to, sadly, to try and look into it, why it was caused. We've got to try and put our efforts into prevention, as well as building on the past. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I appreciate it was a lengthy piece, but I think it's important that we try and focus in on that.
We're going to need to try and wind up shortly, so yeah.
I'll start in the answer to that one. I'm not sure he made enough of a claim for us to arrest him and take him out on the threat of mass murder.
Just for clarity, I have never committed a single crime.
He did make me interested when we said we all have the propensity to do it. I was just saying, well, I'm not sure we do, but we'll reflect on that one. There's a couple of points that I probably want to. You're absolutely right in terms of kind of constant monitoring, and actually. Myself and Nikki went to a summit which was actually talking about the fire service and its culture, and actually a chief constable well known in this county was actually addressing it. And she did actually, it was quite a surprise to them because the fire service doesn't have anything like professional standards. The first thing I kind of want to reassure you is, because of the decision we've taken here in Northamptonshire with a combined HR department, it's less likely to happen. There is no national framework to ensure that it doesn't, and I think it's a good point. And ironically, if the fire white paper comes through and potentially we end up with maybe a combined College of Policing and College of Fire, that would be very easily for us to kind of come out of it. On your bit about prevention, you know that's always been my thing. What can we do from stopping it happening? Because you can't stop everything from happening in terms of some of the crimes that we see. However, the observatory, some of the chiefs have been leading very heavily on in terms of getting sharing of data and combining information from around the county, does exactly some of those things. Actually allows us to profile somebody who might be in there, getting into low-level trouble before it escalates. We will always be looking at those things. AI has an important role to play in all of future policing. For instance, and I say, bear with me on this one because I'm going to sound like something out of science fiction. I went to a summit very recently where they were actually kind of showing artificial intelligence overlaid on CCTV, and the computer could identify, for instance, smoke that's going to lead to a fire. It could also look at somebody's gait to see if they kind of got aggressive behaviour. Also, using it in America, it can identify every different sort of gun you've ever imagined in terms of knives. So it's not beyond the wit of of humankind to actually go forth and say, well, actually, will we have drones running around with artificial intelligence and cameras that is kind of flying around in terms of streets, which will kind of give coverage. And as we'll move on to the estate strategy later, all of these permutations and possibilities need to be considered when you try and look that bit further down the line. I'll go back to you, Madam Chairman, and hope that we'll let them go back to work and move on with the agenda. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
We have overrun on this, so obviously it's a very important topic, and so I know Mrs. Shields wanted to come in again, but I really think that we probably explored just about it. But thank you very much for your work, and we hope you. In a way that when if somebody was saying about how do we fare, not having people brought forward is not necessarily the right thing. We need to make sure that we root out anyone that shouldn't be in the force and stop anyone coming in that shouldn't as well. I hope you, haven't spent too much of your time here but I think it is important that it reassures the public of what's going on. So thank you very much. Sorry, Mr. Shields, I think we just need to move on now. Yep.
Three.
Sorry, Mrs. Shields, I was saying I think we need to let them get off and move on to the next topic, because we're already 20 minutes over the time that James has suggested.
Can I just
very quickly.
Well, first of all, Commissioner, what I would like to say is that I was very impressed with your various programs you've implemented, especially youth program.
I think that's on the next
flare and everything.
Mrs. Shields, that's on the next item.
Yes, I know, but what I wanted to say, and I concur with what Andre was just saying, is that this review of DBS, frequency of doing it, you remember the case of this janitor at the school who had murdered those two little girls. This is a very much the scenario that can happen. You have a police officer who leaves, etc., and he will replicate that into another organization. And for that, if, for instance, we have a system
Mrs.
where
Shields,
the school...
Sorry, you really need to get to the point quickly, because we need to let them get off.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. If you have a system that will stop the school, for instance, and you have a system to identification, then the control will be there for the person to stop them doing the crime in the first place. That's what I just wanted to say.
Okay. Well, I think on that note, we thank you very much for your attendance, and you can get on. Okay, thank you. Right, we move on to the estate strategy when the Commissioner's ready. Yeah, no problem.
I was also planning for time for lectures being returned to. Wasn't quite ready. Sorry, I'll start anyway. So, Madam Chairman, I think it's fair to say that delivering an efficient and effective estate for both the police and fire and rescue is challenging during the best of times. However, under the current climate, the task becomes even more challenging, but one that we need to address in a realistic and pragmatic way. We've undertaken a review of the joint estate to ensure our buildings are affordable, meet organisational needs and provide best value in the current and future economic climate. As you'll see from the report, the plans to create a new joint garage hub in a building in Earls Bartons will now not go ahead in that building, as the cost of the project increased from £6 to £16 million. Yeah, such is the... So I'm committed to bringing together both police and fire fleets and the garage teams in one facility. But obviously the cost of carrying out the development outweighs those benefits it could bring, so the building will now be sold. We'll also look at other ways to deliver a joint facility and provide updates to the panel when they're available. You'll notice in there that we have a review that was kicked off in October of last year, that my ambition that I wanted to create for that we would have something like a 15 to 20 year strategy that no matter who sits in this chair from a police and fire point of view, and of what political persuasion, that is such quality that it gets carried on in both chiefs. So more joined up working is essential, and we'll continue to expect more progress in the area, and we'll continue to review our plans to ensure that we make absolute sense in a changing economic climate. Happy to take some questions.
Thank you very much. If I can just start, at 1.2, you say the current estate is close to capacity and you need a new key supporting building. Is that something that cannot be accommodated at Derby House then?
It's a good question. The current estate is close to capacity if it's fully utilised. One of the reasons we kicked off the estates review is actually I genuinely believe we're not at capacity. It is if everybody came and attended, but with modern working, we need to look at inventive ways that we actually could do it. I have obviously seen some draft of the current estate strategy, but it's not been approved yet by the estates board, and there's some work still to go in it. But we will be communicating with him forthwith. But you're right, there are some buildings that are not fit for purpose, some that don't stand the testimony of where they should or shouldn't be. Are they in the right locations? So we're trying to bring all of those things together, and we brought, as mentioned in here, Gleeds outside property organisation to help us with that, in a full master plan to make sure that we can. At some point we've had the police control room has been in the current location in Wootton Hall, and at some point needs updating, moving, building. The fire one sits over on the back of a fire station over in Daventry. If we're going to bring joint working together even better, build on some of the recommendations that come out of the tragedy that occurred in Manchester, Grenfell, then we need to make sure that we're fit for purpose for the future. So in some respects, in a perfect world, I would prefer to have brought you a complete update on the estate strategy, but you specifically asked for it. So I've given you where we are right now, but you'll get a lot more in this area shortly.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Well, looking at the list, if you look at Kettering Police Station, which has been sitting there 10 years, empty, what would I say about that? Yeah.
I don't think it's 10 years. I've only been in post for about 7, and it was operational for 7 months since I've been there, so it might be fine.
All right, anyway, the thing is, there it is sitting empty, and you've actually decided to sell it. Which, is good. But how long does it take to sell one of your properties?
I think that's how long's a piece of string, actually.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
On this, as a member of Northamptonshire Council, I would ask you to go back to your council and ask them that question. Because the problem is you own part of it, and the reason that it hasn't been sold is we have had significant, I'm going to be polite, significant challenges in working with Northamptonshire to get it sold. I would have sold it years ago had people moved their backsides a little quicker. You'll forgive me, I feel very passionate about this one because I'm rather agitated on the subject. It is not serving the residents of Northamptonshire well, and it is certainly not serving our desire to liquidate it. It is fair to say, very recently, some significant progress has been made, and I do believe it's now being sold as a joint asset, and we're working on that together. But it's fun that you chose that one, and thank you very much for bringing that one up, because it's a very sore subject for me.
Therefore, when it is sold eventually, does half the money go to Northants, and does half the money come to you?
the appropriate percentage goes to North Northamptonshire and to I'd say myself in my capacity. I don't mean myself, you know what I mean. Yes, the appropriate percentage. I think we actually owed the balance of the property.
I think with the majority.
Yes, there is I would call it a ransom strip in that Kettering have own, but I am confident that it could be disposed of shortly, because you're right, it is an eyesore, it could be redeveloped, and it could provide some valuable space and I suspect the decline of Kettering Borough Council and the birth of the North meant it all got delayed as a consequence of that. But I hope with renewed vigour and a little extra effort from you, if you would nag someone for me, I would be very much appreciative of that.
Okay.
As you, Commissioner, as you don't have too many issues with South Northants, let me put it this way. Sorry about that. I am really. I'm not within arm's distance. Obviously, the question that I would come up with, obviously, is what's happening to Toaster? Because obviously you've purchased it, so you wholly own that particular location. It's in a prime location, and you haven't even got it on your list yet. No, I don't think it is. Oh, sorry.
I wasn't playing the time. I was actually waiting for you to. You are right to address some of the challenges I got in Kettering. We bought the magistrates thing. The reason it's not on the market is, and you might laugh at this one, but this is the vagaries and challenges of dealing with property, and the Toaster police station, and you as a councillor stating that it's a police station is probably very helpful, because actually we have had a significant challenge in that somewhere in the vagaries of the wonderful system that is planning, someone doesn't believe it's a police station, and we're having to prove that it has been used as a police station in terms of the bill. We might laugh about it, but actually, and that is nothing to do with that's nothing to do with you as a council. Again, I know in your previous guys in South Northamptonshire, I'd be very interested. It would make a great care home. It would make a great opportunity to redevelop. But at the moment, the bit that has been holding it up, I am hoping they've come to a conclusion. But like I said, I should find out in the next statement. Was genuinely we bought the magistrates' courts to overcome it, but now we're having to prove that it was used as a police station. I'm like, come and have a look. It still is. The other bit I would kind of say as well. And when we bring forth the estate strategy, and I'm kind of putting this big, enormous disclaimer now, I'm deliberately trying to come up with a strategy to avoid both of these situations, that we have a long-term view that says, right, we will not be wanting to, and I'm trying not even to pick a building, but we might not use that building in that way in 10 years' time. So at least we know that we're building up our capacity in some other place. Whatever I say will create wild speculations. I'm not trying to pick one, but actually some additional development. You're right, we have the Derby Close site. There is additional bits that we could put on it. We will look to maximise some of those. You know, I've got Kettering Fire Station, for instance, in the middle of an estate next to a school. I've made it very clear I could potentially build a new one next to the NAB on the other place. But before I rush that, because I own that piece of land, I've asked them the question, for those that know it, the intersection between the 43 and the 14, wouldn't the best place to put one that would serve an awful lot of areas in terms of a hub be next to Costa Coffee and the shop, the car and garage. So not only we're trying to maximise, and then there's affordability, we're trying to say, right, where are housing developments going to be? We know there's a lot kind of going on, that we've got that longer term one that says, you know, do we want to stay in the Mount? Should we expand, for instance, up Mere Way? Should we be building something at 16A? Is the fire service, fire has come down a much more, in fairness, going back up a little bit. But actually, where is the fire risk? Are we better off? Are our stations in the right place in terms of those developments? So that's the work that's going in. And it's not something you can hurry. It also needs to take account, you know, with Chief Fire Officer, we've asked for an emergency cover review I expect to see in this summer. That needs to take into account in terms of locations. You know, all of these then sit in terms of you've got the challenges around, you know, we've got cultures. So actually, how do we make sure appropriate learning? How do I bring better working together? So a lot of these things you'll start to see, and it's taken us quite some time to get to this point. But any endorsement to prove that Towcester police station is a police station would be very much appreciated from you all.
Okay.
It's good to know. Please don't take this the wrong way, Adam. As a young man, it would be kind of more helpful if actually Councillor Pritchard could say he had visited a couple of Cub Scouts, because it was a few years even before that. But thank you for that. Not meaning that disparagingly, Kevin.
Thank you. Councillor Strachan.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Just a couple of questions, Councillor. Through the chair, obviously. I'm looking at the list of property proposals, I suppose, for to get rid of, properties to get rid of. And I just wanted to know, how are the areas like Corby, Kettering, Desborough, how are those areas policed? I.e., what station covers these areas? Because if you're closing them, where are the police being housed? And the other question I've got is to do with Earls Barton. Where is the current fleet workshops are located for the organization? Because you were planning on doing up the Earls Barton area to cover the whole lot. You're not doing that now. You're getting rid of that particular building. So where are the repairs carried out?
Thank you. You belie a really important point that you make there. First, to be very specific, it calls it Desborough Police Station. Actually, it's a police house. That we're disposing of for some time, because thankfully the Corby police station, which has been vacant for a similar period of time to Kettering, because as you'll for those in the north of county will know, that primarily we operate from the northern accommodation block, which is up there in between Kettering and Corby. Police and fire and all work from that, and they've been in there for. The ground was broken on that the day before I took office and was opened about 18 months. So they've been operating out of there for some time. But one of the things that's always been very key to me, and actually it's an important proxy measure that I work on with the Chief Constable, is around visibility. And you quite rightly have challenged me about police officers out in communities and not sat in police stations. So we've gone out of our way to invest in mobile technology, such is the case now that we can measure whether a police officer is within a couple of years. I say we particularly measure how far a police person is outside of a station. So actually we've got consistently in the high 60s where people are actually out on patrol. So we're actually going out of our way to make sure they are. But there are quite rightly places when they need to rest, recuper, and whether we like it or not, you know, cases need to be built when you're trying to take some prosecution to court. So actually there needs to be appropriate places to do that. One of the things I'm also keen to make sure that we do, and there is some bits around that we're working through, which kind of leads into our stuff around DBS vetting and some of those, in terms of our ability to share buildings. So actually the fact that a police officer is vetted and a firefighter isn't, is for the ability, and I use, you know, we talk about Towcester, there is I think it's about 75 yards to the left of it, if you're looking at it, is a fire station. It's a non-retained fire, sorry, it's a retained fire station, so it's a non-manned. That can't make sense. In Brackley, for instance, the police station and the fire station are absolutely next door to one another. So there are some of those. You mentioned Desborough. I've got Desborough Fire Station, and I've got Rothwell Fire Station. For anyone that knows it, I'm not trying to catch you out, Madam Chair, but what are we, a couple of miles between the two?
Very close.
Yes, they're literally the closest. So it's those kind of ones we look at. I want to make sure that there's better use of the estate, and there are other things that we're looking at. If you look in Milton Keynes, they've done some super stations, which is both police and fire ones. All of those things are being looked at. I do understand the comfort that people derive from seeing an emergency service building in their community. That is not lost on us, but we're trying to balance that with modern working, make sure there are more vehicles. I mean, for instance, we can also not only see where they are, we can also better understand these days through data what are utilisation of our vehicles, that we can have a look and see, are those areas being patrolled, those are not. So we can do all those. The second part of your question was quite rightly to say, where are they currently being done? So fire continues to be done at Moulton Logistics Centre, which is behind the Moulton Fire Station, and then the fleet for policing is still done at Wootton Hall. I can tell you at some point in the future, whilst we might not be moving to this one, and I have to be careful because I have some idea of some of the options that are available to us. They will be moving in the future, but that's not immediate because we'll probably need to build something or buy something to move them. And there's some technical nuances as to why this one isn't appropriate to the other one that I can't put in the public domain yet. But I will even better ask that question in the not too distant future.
Okay. Councillor Carr, you had a question. John Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Stephen. Just a few things, if I may. I mean, obviously, any police presence in a town or village across the county is always beneficial, not just because of that presence, but that idea about community cohesion, civic pride and things like that. Particularly, police stations years ago, and I still think they're sometimes a focal point, whether it's good or bad, within the centre of a community. And obviously, you've obviously talked about Kettering here. You've obviously talked about Towcester. You're losing that presence sometimes within your community. And obviously, I know we totally work differently as a police force, but I just don't want you to forget that point. The other thing that slightly concerns me is with these assets, whilst you may be looking to dispose of them, have you thought about other ways that those premises can be used to generate revenue for yourself? Obviously, I realise that in some cases, some of these buildings and facilities, you have to say, no, they're not going to do that. Explain to me what police boxes are in a moment as well, because I don't quite know what they are and what those locations are. And I hate to say it, with my naivety, I don't actually know where the Elsbarton Fleet Workshop is located in Elsbarton. I think I know where it's located, so if you could tell me, that would be lovely.
First of all, can I kind of give you some reassurance? We understand the importance that buildings have in terms of their significance. But I don't think anyone would thank me if I tell you I'm going to have 50 less police officers because I'm retaining a bunch of old, outdated buildings. So I can assure you we've got it to the highest number we ever had. I'm doing everything to make sure that we can keep it there. One of the reasons for bringing police and fire together is why aren't there more combined stations? Mearway is a good example of that. Currently in Corby, for instance, I've got some people in the police in the Cube and the fire service in the station. Also, it's a significant station. Is it in the right location for the developments that are going to come on? So the whole idea, and I'm not trying to cause it, I'm using it as an example. And that's the sort of thing I want to say. Should it be that police move into Corby Fire Station for the next 10 years, but with a view that we're looking for land further out to the right-hand side of Corby, where there's even more development going to go on to make sure it's situated for the future. So those are exactly the kind of things that we're going out of our way to do. I'm trying to think how I could describe for you where Earls Barton Fleet Workshop is. The best way I could, it's probably worth saying we've got it down as the Earls Barton Fleet Workshop. It never became the Earls Barton Fleet Workshop. It's essentially an Earls Barton warehouse where we putting it on back on the market, if that makes sense. So I wouldn't worry about police boxes. They're exactly that. They're not quite the Doctor Who TARDIS, if you like, just for your. I would actually say, and forgive I can't think of a better terminology, because actually, if anyone's visited them, they kind of look like outdated WCs. Really, would be the best way I could describe them. They tend to be brick square blocks. Yes, where they are there. The proposal was brought forward by Northamptonshire Police saying, we really just don't need these in terms of doing them. And underlying all of it, there are kind of different things that aren't even in here in terms of the state. You know, some of you will know we've got things like ESM CP, which is going to replace kind of airwave. You know, there are radio sites and locations that we own around the county. Some of those will be disposed of. Some will be transferred to national government because they need them in terms of mast sites. But I welcome your final point around can we look at alternative ways? Absolutely. And that's why we brought a professional outfit in to give us those alternatives. And there's also the bit taking Councillor Maxwell's point from earlier and Councillor Pritchard is actually, are there better ways we could also dispose of one? So also, rather than going, here's a site, let's sell it, wouldn't it be better to take a little bit longer, do it properly? Maybe get planning permission with outline designs on it. And that might mean that we can help the wider view in terms of green housing. It can be in terms of some of those. But actually, it means that we're getting both better value for the public, and there are also the opportunity as part of the joint estate works with both of the councils, are there other ways, and or the NHS. You know, should we, and I'm just using this as an example, should we actually being extreme, close all of the police and fire stations in Northampton and just build a super site next to the hospital? All of those things in terms of in terms of kind of commonality being looked at. I would say we've got a first draft. I think some more work will go away. We'll look at it in terms of May. I would say at some point during the summer, certainly early autumn, you'll get a full idea of some of the things we're looking at. But overall, there will be a consolidation because in the end, the best way for us to have is if you like, slightly bigger sites. And there's a lot of discussion about, but it will be hub and spoke based. So you will have significant locations for both police and fire, but actually, let's not kid one another. We still need those strategically located sites around the county. And I haven't got the blueprint in front of me, but I look at Woodford Hulse that's sat out way there in terms of the county and also its provision. You know, in Oundle, I actually have a police station and a fire station that they're about 50 yards between them. Is there not a bet? Now, the first question is you could move from one or to other, and that might be the right thing to do. But actually, it's also, is it going to be in the right place for the future? So I'm actually trying to make sure. I felt that for many years we've kind of done what's expedient, not what's right. So this should be a big step. I expect it to be quite controversial when it comes forth, because there will be some disposal of some sites. There'll be some renovation of some sites that people aren't happy with. But actually, it's important that we do it right for the long term.
Just coming back to the police boxes, is there a market for those? And you know, or are they?
I don't know is the answer to that particular point. I was going to say, if you're making me an offer, Madam Chair, I'll say I'm open to offers always. And some of them are just exiting because they're actually on leases. And where appropriate in terms of being sold. Yeah, and you're right, but there can be there can be strange uses, you know, it might be, I mean, I know the one in Kingsthorpe, particularly in partnership with the blind, we're actually looking at in terms of some of the options that, no, there's I want to call it, I was going to say, that's what I was at, Northamptonshire Association for the Blind. We'll look at any options to give in terms of provision and for people. With the utmost respect, I wouldn't ask you to get too vexed about this because it's nothing compared to what I'm going to bring to you in a couple of months' time.
Okay. Ms Woodhouse, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Carr has already asked part of the question that I was have around post boxes, police boxes. How many of those are around the county?
I believe the number is 5, isn't it? Is what I think it is. I've got 5 in my head. If it's any more, it's 6. But I'm pretty certain in my mind it's 5. It's not many of them, if you like.
Okay, perfect.
We're not talking of massive.
But I personally think a bit of renovation, they would make fantastic places to have a pizza place from them myself.
Mrs. Shields.
Yes, talking about police boxes, one example is in Northampton, in Abington, on a traffic light. You have a police box there, and it made me think like the comment you say, yeah. And then as you walk a little bit further, you have also a I don't know how you would describe this. It's not a shed, but bigger than a shed. And it's been converted, and then it was redone, etc. Seat and everything. It's forever closed. It was meant to be for young people. Could you tell me why is it always closed? Because I walk in Abington Park very often, and then I went there for the inauguration because the seats were lovely and everything, and the police was there at that time, and there is a padlock and it's closed. So that's a question.
I'm afraid I've got to take the...
Ms Woodhouse might have the answer to that.
Even better, thank you, Paul.
I walk in Abington Park a lot as well, and to be honest, I've always seen it being used when I'm walking around. So they tend to use it like mainly in the like late afternoon, evening-ish. Yeah, I've seen young people and carers and their family going in and doing different sessions. So, well.
I'm not certain it's actually my building, but I will make inquiries to confirm because I don't remember seeing it on any of my asset lists. In Abington, I'm aware of the one that looks like a WC, but I'm not aware that we have another one there. But if I've got something else I don't that I own that I didn't know about, I actually think it's a partnership or a local council. So
yeah, it looks like a lodge type building. I think it's something to do with the council.
But talking about that box, will it not be good if, for instance, you were selling it for selling newspaper, magazine, it's right on a traffic as an idea?
I'm sure the Commissioner will look at all sorts of possibilities.
I keep Mrs. King awake with some of my imaginative ideas. Opening my own Costa Coffee or Starbucks at that intersection, I think would be a much better use of it. And we will always be looking for a kind of additional opportunities. Probably worth me coming and talking about some of the several £100,000 from the frameworks that we've created that have eased the burden on the residents of Northamptonshire at some point. I'm not sure I'm in the newspaper business. I've no desire to compete with I was calling him Rupert Maxwell, but Rupert Murdoch. I was confusing the two.
Okay, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I know the Commissioner is a very collaborative chap, so I'm sure the answer to this question will be yes, but it would be remiss of me as Cabinet Member for Housing at West Northants not to ask that when the final list is produced, that the Commissioner consults with West Northamptonshire Council, because we're very keen on any sites in urban areas in particular that may be suitable for the construction of social housing. So will he make a commitment to providing us with that list so we can assess it.
I would love to work with you on that. And in fairness, the team does work in conjunction with yours to make sure in both North and the West. But there probably is a piece just to also make sure that when we've got them, that actually we say, well, actually, is there something at a higher level? For instance, I'm still very keen that you get the clock tower, for instance, sorted and finished. And for those that weren't aware, that's primarily something being done with the council, would give priority housing to emergency workers in the centre of the town, which is an important part for us in terms of retention and the rejuvenation of it. So I'm absolutely determined to continue to work in that space.
Thank you. Well, I think it's because of watch this space, isn't it? It sounds like there's going to be some more information coming soon. So thank you for that sort of pre-look, and I'm sure you're looking at all different opportunities for all the buildings. But maybe by bringing it up, somebody might think, oh, I might like to buy that. Okay, so we'll go on to the next item, which is your delivery update. And if you'd like to give your report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Today's update report provides you with a comprehensive review of the work being undertaken to deliver the priorities set out in my police, fire and crime plan. One of those priorities is focusing on antisocial behaviour, and I'm proud that Northamptonshire has been chosen as one of the 16 areas in England and Wales by the Home Office to participate in the new crackdown on antisocial behaviour. Under this plan, Northamptonshire will receive an additional £2 million to support either new hotspot and enforcement areas with the highest rates of antisocial behaviour, and or trial a new immediate justice scheme to deliver swift and visible punishments. This is an excellent development for our county, as antisocial behaviour has a negative impact on neighbourhood and ruins lives. Communities across the country should not have to put up with such behaviour, which is why I want to see a robust approach that builds on the problem-solving work that Northamptonshire Police are already delivering. This work has already been supported by the excellent results of the Safer Streets scheme, which has successfully seen us bring more than £3 million of funding to the county. As you'll see from the report, the work being delivered in Queensway and Wellingborough is delivering real benefits to the local area and includes 650 new doors for properties, alley gates being installed and security lighting for a number of properties. These schemes also include a major extension of Northamptonshire, North Northamptonshire's CCTV network with 15 new cameras on the estate, whilst the activity schemes will also be provided for young people. Delivering such work sends a strong message to local communities that we will not tolerate criminality and antisocial behaviour. I'm proud that the increase in police officer numbers in Northamptonshire and the investment in innovative and positive new ideas that support the front line are starting to deliver real improvements. For example, a pilot scheme to support businesses in Northamptonshire with better investigation of shoplifting and other retail crime has successfully delivered real improvements and will now establish permanently. And in addition to those resources, we will now be covering the west of the county. In addition to this, a new Flare app, which helps women and girls feel safer in Northamptonshire, has seen a steady number of users assume and use the app to report anonymously and quickly any incidents or behaviour that make them feel unsafe when they're out and about. This data is collated, analysed by the force, and so any problem areas can be identified and relevant action. So far, we've had almost 60 reports of unacceptable or threatening behaviour, and it's encouraging we're receiving reports on a regular basis, which can be followed up. No one should feel vulnerable or threatened when they're out and about in our county, and by working together with the force, I want people to know that such behaviour will not be tolerated in Northamptonshire. Finally, Madam Chairman, you will see in today's report, we are working hard on our response to the HMI CFRS report on the culture in the fire sector. And I made it very clear that the status quo is simply not an option, as we need to challenge and root out unacceptable behaviour and attitudes in the fire and rescue service. As members may know, I've tasked the Chief Fire Officer, and he will be delivering this vitally important piece of work to ensure that concerns raised by HMI CFRS in relation to embedding values and promoting equality, diversity and inclusion are addressed and resolved. I've said that the public have, as I have said, the public have trust and admiration for the fire service, and rightly so. But trust must be earned and confidence is quickly lost. Work to create a fire service with a culture where people can stay and do their best work to keep the public safe will take time. And I will work with the Chief Fire Officer and I will hold him to account to ensure that we have a leadership team that leads by example and fosters a culture that embraces excellence and mutual respect. I'm proud that my office is able to deliver such a wide-ranging agenda of work to support me in delivering the Police Fire and Crime Plan, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Well, I'm really impressed with the number of different projects and the scope of them. It was quite tremendous. I just wondered, though, there are a couple where there seem to perhaps be possibly some overlap with other things. So, for instance, the nighttime medical patrols in Kettering. How does that work with the snow van? That was one. And there's also pubs and clubs signing up for nighttime, and there's obviously pub watch, and then there's retail systems where you can the shopkeepers can sign up to. So some of these schemes are they linked in with the existing ones, or because I'm sure they can work alongside each other?
There's two parts. I'm going to let Nikki give you more detail on the one in Kettering. Sometimes, so as we deliver the snow van and do some of those things, some might be time fashioned in related to what they do before something else comes on stream. But I just want to reassure you, yes, they are all designed to work together. Sometimes it might not always be obvious, but I'll let Nikki comment about the one in Kettering.
The activity in Kettering is actually something that came to us through our grants awarding process from an organisation who actually put paramedic qualified staff out into the nighttime economy. We have agreed to support it at the moment because we don't have snow van capacity in Kettering in the same way that we do in Northampton, but it will be time limited. And when we have got a snow van for Kettering, we will be withdrawing from that because there is an element of duplication if we were to continue with both.
So the snow van isn't available in Kettering yet? I mean, you were buying one.
Sadly, with the combination of Brexit and the overhang from COVID, you would think procuring such things would be relatively easy. The cost of procuring has been challenging. I don't know. I actually thought we had done it now, but I don't think it's actually, well, I know it's not out there yet, but I believe we had successfully procured one. But I don't think you'll find it's been fitted out yet.
Okay, thank
but
you.
It will be.
Mrs. Shields.
Yes, yes, Commissioner. I was very impressed with all these various implementation of programs, so I want to congratulate you for that. I like the idea of the online self-assessment that give a star rating regarding the pubs for nighttime safety scheme. Now, I have download it as well for myself because I wanted to know what this flare report is. And you know,
provide you some cards you can hand out to your friends as well. It could be also fellow members of the family.
Yeah, the reason why I've done that is because I wanted to know, first of all, what kind of app and the facility, etc., that it provides. And I think it's an excellent idea. But also, you know, when you go into Google's and you want to go into downloading an app, you have a rating for using that app. It would be a good idea that you highlight, you know, and give a star rating for this Flare app, and also give a little bit more publicity on that, because I think it is an excellent tool, not only for women, but I think for anybody really. You know, if you're in danger, that Flare should be used by anyone of any age, actually. Yeah, so I wanted to say that. And equally, with this ID scanning technology that you implemented, why don't you do again a rating system, a star rating, so like that people can see the usefulness of that implementation. And then, of course, I was very impressed with the Queensway Street, that to tackle acquisitive crimes such as burglary, because of course that is an issue that you have over there. So that is my question really regarding the Flare and the star rating implementation.
Thank you. First of all, it's very kind for you to give me some compliments. I don't do this alone. I work with some amazing people who are dedicated and passionate about improving the safety in Northamptonshire. So I, on their behalf, will take thank you for the compliments that are put our way. There's a couple of bits. Yeah, okay. I was like, everyone's bombarding me. I was like, oh, I'm getting information coming at me from all angles. First, some answer to some of the questions in there. The El Savvy and Pub Watch are different schemes, and they're linked. The grant, as Nikki said, is only for 6 months. The snow van will be live in the summer. We actually have the vehicle and it is being fitted out as we speak. We obviously advertised the Flare app in a lot and are also looking to see how we can continue to roll it out. I do want to be a bit careful about suddenly becoming in the ratings business, if you know what I mean, because there are some ones that do that. But I think the bit I would most want people to know, for instance, the whole thing with the ID scan. Literally, it's an important one. I don't think it's quite the right thing to actually go with, because what you're doing, it's a piece of technology that allows them to make sure that they're over age, that you've got identification, and to stop things like where people and you know, it's funny enough, I was talking to someone who'd seen it firsthand before this was implemented, where somebody almost goes and shows their ID and then literally passes it to their friend behind, or one's using your photo ID and give it the passport to someone else. It stops those kind of things because it scans all of those. Make sure that some underage people aren't getting in it. It also has some great benefits, and actually, should there be any challenges in an environment, then actually police can actually see who's been in there. It allows the people who are, I'm going to call them ne'er-do-wells. It stops that you might be putting them in terms of a bar list and say they're kind of inappropriate. But that in conjunction with kind of El Savvy and some of also the training that we did really is having a benefit. And when I went out, admittedly, it was last year now, and there was some individual who was complaining that he wasn't being allowed into a bar with his girlfriend. And I spoke to the female manager of the establishment on Bridge Street and said, no, he hasn't done anything wrong today, but he wasn't with his girlfriend last night. Him and his friends tried to get a girl and harass her in the corner. And what they had said to her is too profane for me to tell you in here, and we don't want his his sort in our establishment. And that's the way you call it out, isn't it? Because actually by calling that out, I can imagine the conversation he had with his girlfriend when he got home would be quite interesting. Because what he'd said he wanted to do to another woman, you know, I'm not even sure he should have said it to her, to be blunt with you. So it's useful that you can kind of identify in terms of some of those individuals.
Okay, Councillor Maxwell.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that you've got 18 council parishes which were awarded funding for safety, road safety community fund. But I see them mostly in the west, not in the north. And I was just wondering if there was a possibility of perhaps coming over to Earthling Borough, because I think there is a problem over there with road safety. The other issue is, the second issue is that where, so in Woodford, for instance, you've got a little shop in Woodford which is being robbed on a regular basis, but nothing happens about it. You know, you don't seem to, but I know that's not necessarily to do with you because it's to do with Chief Constable. But I do think that prosecuting people sends out the right message, even if it doesn't necessarily make a lot of difference to the offence that they actually may be prosecuted for. But I think we've got to, in villages, I think we need to support them and show that this funding that you've got goes out to them as well.
Thank you. 2 points. Happy to hear about the challenge in Earthling. Just on the, if you let us know the location that you're saying is suffering, we could pass it on to the Retail Crime Partnership, and actually they can visit, sign them up. It is worth sort of saying, as you'll see in a bit in there, the kind of jumps in successful prosecutions has been quite significant, so much so, which is why we are rolling it out on the west of the county. But there is also a good example of something that the north had and the west didn't. The beauty of having the north and west is we can try something in one area or another, and we have a barometer of it. I would also encourage, and maybe it's as you know, because I think I've seen you at it, we do briefings for both councillors and parish councillors every 4 to 6 weeks. I'm always open to anything else I can do to spread the word even further. But much as I'm a coercive, lovely, persuasive kind of guy, I'm not sure I can force them to attend so that I can kind of give them money. It does require a bit of proactiveness on their part. But the money is collected from all around the county in terms of how we do it, from speed awareness courses and stuff like that. So I would actually, I'd say I would want to spend it there. Any assistance you give, I'm more than happy to do. And part of the reason we bring it up is so that people are also, it's there, it's on our website, and encourage people to apply.
One more question, which came up this week on Tuesday at Woodford, is that you have Zoom meetings now with the villages. The JAG meetings I'm talking about. Is there a possibility that these could be live, because they feel they get a lot more out of it than on a Zoom meeting?
Just for clarity of language, when you say you, I think you mean the Northamptonshire police. Northamptonshire police is looking at ways, and I had some representation about their modifying their engagement with particularly JAG's community safety partners. Something I'll take that away and mention it to them.
Thank you, Councillor McGee.
Thank you. I won't go on because I've already said quite a lot about all these kinds of things this week. But but it's actually really brilliant. There's some really excellent things in here. particularly I don't want to talk about it too much, but the ID scanning. When I came back from university in Brighton and came back to here and started doing the nightlife in Northamptonshire, I didn't realise that wasn't a thing everywhere. That was something that happens in other places, and it has done really well, and I'm sure has kept me safe on many a night out. So to keep it short and succinct, yeah, brilliant, thank you. And I am aware that some of these changes, particularly in the early intervention and all those other things, are going to take a while to see the difference. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that. So thank you.
And thank you. Just on that, you're right. It became, our ambition was any establishment that's open beyond 1 o'clock. Should we get more funding? Would we look to see if there's others that we can with? Absolutely. As with all of these, there's always more that you would want to do. You mentioned around the kind of the El Savvy one, that it's deliberately designed to encourage that rating, to say, you know what, this is an establishment I want to go in. And I think the bit we're trying to do is to drive up standards. I've had chats with, and I hope some of those conversations have emboldened licensing. I was talking to the chair of the West in terms of licensing, and I was particularly pleased that it got the bit between his teeth that this was an establishment where, quite frankly, women had been sexually assaulted, were not taking their obligations, and there was this feeling that this was a location that almost like, well, we should keep giving, we'll give them another chance in terms of licenses. Kind of go, no, we have to draw a line in the sand, and I think knowing that we're trying to push the standard higher will actually bring way more other benefits, because then, as a worldly young lady, you can invite your friends and know that they're going to feel safe and come to the county, which is good for the economy and all that sort of stuff. But actually, that is the bit that needs to be underneath it. Only by people feeling safe, secure, respected, and looked after in a county, they can then go and do the other things, which in terms of economic growth, comfort, mental health, all of those things are in terms of improved. I wish there's more that we could do, but actually trying to be very precise in terms of it. Like I said, I've got a fantastic bunch of individuals that I work with who do some of this. So thank you.
Okay, Mr. Woodhouse, you have a question.
And it's not far from me, Madam Chairman. Councillor Strachan has had his hand up on a number of occasions, and I'm not, because he's close to you. You probably can't see him. I can. He's very. I think I should lend him some paper that he can throw at you in the future to get your attention in a nice way. He was very diligently handing hands up.
I must be. Councillor Strachan.
Thank you, Chair. Before I congratulate the Commissioner on this report, I was asked by a colleague to raise this, and it's if there's any plans, if there are any plans in place, sorry about that, to deal with the increased graffiti across the town, and in particular, Delapre, the use of tag. And I question what this tag was, and it's to do with, apparently, these people who do the graffiti, they put the signature, they have a special signature they put, and that's called tag. So that's the question that somebody asked me to ask you, Commissioner. Anyhow, I'm very, very impressed with this report. It's got a lot of stuff in it, really good stuff that you have been doing for all of us in Northamptonshire, and thanks for that. Going back to visual policing, I know you said that you have doubled the visual policing in Northamptonshire, but again, I have to say I haven't seen that. For instance, in St. George, we were promised an extra PCS, so we've got one covering all of St. George. We were promised another one. You would check and you would find that there is an extra one listed for St. George, but this person has never, since they've been put on the St. George list, they've never done anything in St. George because they've been off sick. You know, we want to have that sorted out. You can't have somebody listed as an extra DCSO in our ward when this person is off on permanent sick. To me, you know, it's really unfair. Going on to the work that is being done in partnership with various schools, which is this is in 2.17 of the report. I have to again come back to the fact that we had an issue that I raised well over a year ago, where one particular young man from the NIA school was attacked, was beaten, he lost a tooth, and he had a big scar on the side of his eyes from where he was hit by somebody with something. And he was threatened with a knife. Now, the police were supposed to do something about it. They've done absolutely nothing. And here we are now, was it 4 weeks ago? We had a similar incident where a young man's been killed. And then all hell broke loose. You know, to me, something is wrong with the system because we have a lot of things in place, but in certain areas, it just isn't working. So that's an area where, again, I think we've got things in place, but this is another area where we've failed. We've failed the public. You know, somebody had to die before we saw some action. I mean, isn't it all wrong? That's wrong, isn't it? It's really unfair. It's unfair on the community. You know, I reported a thing. I have photograph. I still got photographs of the man's face. His teeth is knocked out as well. Nothing's been done. He's been threatened with a knife. Nothing's been done. And here, you know, a year later, something similar, one person died. It is, you know, it's very frustrating for me when I come here and sit down and, you know, I raise issues and I get assurances, but then there's no results.
Do you want to let the Commissioner come back on some of those?
I've got one more case,
okay, yeah.
where we've got a lot of drug dealing in a certain area in Kingsley. And I did report it to the Deputy Commissioner, and he quite wisely put us on to a team. And since then, we've had a meeting. We had the meeting last Saturday, and the officers, we had 3 officers, they came along and they said, their record shows that over 3 months in that particular area, all they had was 3 minor crimes, and they listed the minor crimes. Now we have massive drug dealing. We had complaints from the residents, and the police record shows 3 minor incidents. Something again is wrong. The system isn't working. Now, these are facts. It's frustrating again for me because, it's happening in areas where I represent. And I'm on the panel here, and I'm speaking up for Northampton and in general, but at the end of the day, my patch seems to be neglected. Thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you for those. A couple of bits. I think the first thing to say is I will arrange with my office. I'll come visit you and we'll go for a walk around the area you're talking about, so I can actually see firsthand some of the challenges you're talking about. I'm very interested in your piece around the drug dealing, because at my meeting earlier in the week, and it might be the same area. Is Janice I want to say, is it Councillor Duffy raised something with the Chief Constable? Would that be the same area that she's at?
No, she's probably in the Northampton East.
Okay.
And I'm talking about, what is it, Southwest.
Okay. I will arrange to come out with you and we can have a chat and see firsthand if that's all right.
Actually, the residents are very much appreciative of that, because one of the things that the resident position was saying that they'd like you to come along and have a chat.
Yeah. Consider it done. Obviously, I'm not here. I do want to be very careful. I am very interested to go back to the case you mentioned that nothing's been done on, and if we can catch up separately about that, because I'd like to follow. We do need to be a little bit careful, and I need to be careful about what I say. You know, the absolutely tragic, the loss of any young life, that any implication that the two of them are linked. I'm aware to the background of this one, and I know that they're not linked in terms of what's happened there. Knife crime is a serious issue across this country, and it doesn't matter that we can go overall in this county, it's down by something like 16%. The loss of one life is one too many, and I am interested to funny enough, we've met, and I think the council's got some briefings to see how we can actually all work better together in terms of some of the stuff and some of the challenges that schools face. And actually, you've heard me say for some time, you know, school exclusions. I mentioned earlier on the observatory. We've got some kids that we can actually see that haven't come into contact with policing, because, as you know, I'm very big on early intervention. It's not early intervention if the police are involved. We've got to catch it even earlier in terms of some of our youth offering. I don't know what TAN is, if you know what I mean. I'm going to, sorry?
A tag.
Tag, okay.
It was a graffiti.
I wasn't aware that graffiti was kind of in the policing domain, but I will take it up with the member for community safety on the West and facilitate a conversation with you two outside of it, being on the same one. I think the best thing is to kind of come and see firsthand some of the adjacent, and happy to meet with the community on that front.
As far as I know, graffiti is a council matter.
I was just asked the reason, so that's why I made the absolutely clear. I was asked the reason to the commissioner.
But I also, and that's one of the bits about kind of making sure, because one of the, you'll hear from us later on in the year about a thing called right person, right care. There are some real challenges about making sure that policing focuses on crime. So actually some of the challenges around mental health are kind of major distraction. Right person, right care is building on some sterling work that's been done in Humberside, which is about people in terms of genuinely people with mental health that should be being supported by medical practitioners, and if anything are being supported by policing. And actually someone with a kind of having a medical episode, in reality the last person that they want to see is a police officer. So there is some quite robust work that's going on. We're trying to take those learnings earlier. Yes, we put medical provision in the control room to support our people, but the reality is we need to come up with a way that the organisations who responsibility for these people are. And that's not trying to say we're walking away from them, but we've got to be realistic, because actually you've got examples where we might have more police officers than ever before. Your one around PCSOs is well made. We genuinely, probably because we've been recruiting so many police officers, that we actually have struggled to recruit PCSOs. Or if anything, at the rate that we recruit them, they keep going on to join the regulars. Now that we've kind of topped out on the others, there is some intakes of PCSOs, because, and I'll just give you some reassurance how critical it is to me. I financially penalise the force for every PCSO that they're under. So actually we agree a budget at the beginning of the year. If they don't recruit and don't have those posts filled, I take the money back. So the good news is, if you've got some areas that are feeling, like you said there, I actually have a pot of money where I've taken money back off the force because they haven't had that in that area. And there are some things we're looking at down the line about whether it be community wardens or some other provision that we can kind of look to complement. But if I may, I'd like to come first hand and see some of the things you're talking about.
We'll come back to Ms Woodhouse now. Sorry.
Sorry, Pauline. I just saw his hand.
Thank you. Thank you. So my first question is on page 47, you talk about the pilot, the new antisocial behaviour crackdown pilot. My question to that is, what are the areas that's been chosen for that pilot? That's the first one.
Do you want me in order, or are you going to do them all in outside?
Let me do them all, because I think I've forgotten with all the conversation going on, if that's okay. So I'd like to know what area that pilot will be in, the areas they'll be in. And it's great that that pilot is going to be linked to the Northampton RJ service, because I think it will make a lot of sense in terms of people understanding the impact of their behaviour, because often they never get a chance to do that. And the second question is about the nighttime medical patrols. And I just thought, why is it like that time of day, considering that like a lot of incident that's been going on happens to be in the afternoon, and why is it on those given 2 days like Fridays and Saturdays? And going back to the incident, not wanting to go into any details, is just to say that as you're supporting these projects and you've got a youth team, when incidents happen in Northampton, wouldn't it be good if we could have a plan of action in place in terms of how we deal with and support local people in that area? And in particular, I'm talking about young people, because I was away, got back, heard about it, and went to an event in town on the Saturday and went straight to the Harbour Road, and young people was there, but they just did not know what to do with themselves. And I think we should have a plan of action when things are happening across Northamptonshire, as in how we're going to be dealing with young people, not necessarily a police presence, but at least have people at hand who can feed in and feed back, yeah, in order to try and support local people. So what was the other thing? I think that's it at the moment. And if I can remember anything else, I'll come back. But yeah.
I'd like to turn your thing off.
Oh my God. Sorry.
It's a discipline. Obviously, we didn't write. So the 16 areas, the whole idea is there are 16 police force areas in the country that were given funding. So in other words, there are 43 areas, and we were one of the 16. Without being rude, I don't know who the others were, and I didn't care. All I cared about was getting it for us. It would be, and it'll be a Northamptonshire-wide project. It's not just Northampton, Kettering or something like that. It would be all of them, and we're looking to evaluate. I would have to say that more work needs to be done on how we're going to administer it, because actually, whilst everyone recognises it, it's actually, they're trying to be quite innovative in terms of what you might or might not do. But one of the things when they talk, but there's some clues in there, you know, you talk about immediate justice, that by the very nature implies that there's got to be some form of punishment, but then there also means potentially there's a, conditional caution, there needs to be something in terms of that, which then means the burden, so it's got to be investigated accordingly. So it's not quite as simple as it actually sounds. I'm very glad that we won the money, but it's not one that we can just go, oh, we're going to do that. So there's some quite good collaborative work to make it work. But also, I think the advantages of the different areas that are getting it, they will kind of share ideas. We had some difficult questions. Your second question was kind of about the medic timeline. I think you're talking about the one in the north of the county. Yeah. That was a funding proposal. They came to us in terms of the bit there. And like I said, it's a useful stopgap for us to make sure it was a provision, given that the west has the snow van and we didn't have that up there in the north. Like I said earlier, the snow van will be delivered in the summer. We have it. It's being fitted out as we speak. You make a good point, and I will let Nikki talk about the youth team, but I want to jump to your end piece. I do believe a plan of action is really necessary. I met with some councillors, and one of them was a deputy head at a school, and we were actually talking about, God forbid, we hope there are no more, but actually what would our response look to support school? School is a place of learning. Actually, what are we doing to support heads and a school in terms of some of that decision? Because there was a bit about, should the school have shut on the Friday? And then them kids in terms of the community. I know Nikki's team was deployed, but I'll let her talk about that.
Okay, just to reassure that actually both the youth service team and the SERV team, which comprises both Northampton police officers and our staff, were involved in the immediate crisis management response to the incident, both on the Thursday and right through to the following Tuesday. There was significant work done with the school in relation to how they responded to the event, support to the head teacher and teaching staff, particularly on the Friday when Year 11 children came back into the school, to support them in terms of pastoral support and assistance. There were at least 7 or 8 young people who were directly associated either with the deceased or with the accused, who were given one-to-one support, and some of whom have actually been taken on to serve and other support programs as a consequence of that. There was also input obviously from the local authority, who have their own youth support and community support activities and work done in conjunction with a number of local youth organisations, and the decision was taken on the Tuesday, having put that very, very intensive direct support in over the weekend, which also included work from a commissioned provider, Exodus, who work as part of SERV, and we commissioned extra support from them over that weekend as well. On the Tuesday, once that crisis provision was no longer required, a plan was then developed with the local authority to fall back to youth groups and community groups in the local area who operate on a more normalised basis to pick up support for those young people who didn't require intensive or targeted. In terms of the learning from the incident, I think what's become very, very clear, and certainly was highlighted in the meeting that we had with the councillor concerned, is that in an ideal circumstance, that school would not have closed on that Thursday. The best place for all of those children would have been in school, where they could be properly supported, where they wouldn't have ended up congregating in communal areas, and where we wouldn't have potentially lost a lot of intelligence, which was being circulated within those young people's communities on various social media sites, but also they were essentially cast adrift and didn't have the support in place that they could have had. No one is suggesting that the school day would have been normal, but at least they would have been together and in company and able to have some support and provision. So that has very much been picked up. I was at the Safeguarding Board Strategic Leads meeting yesterday. We have raised it there fortuitously on the same day. A paper was actually brought by one of the West Northants officers around the creation of an education subgroup as part of the Safeguarding Board. So that is actually really beneficial. and the agreed actions in relation to this particular response is that that group will be tasked to work with relevant parties to actually develop a crisis management pack for head teachers, so that in future, where there is unfortunate incidents like this, and sadly we can't say it's never going to happen again, it's unlikely to be regular, and therefore actually just having something consistent to default to is really, really helpful, both for the schools but also for other response agencies working with them, because actually it will hopefully put in place a consistency that doesn't currently exist. And also in the interim, we will be looking to develop a kind of immediate crisis set of messages and also some key contacts that head teachers can contact in that situation. We're conscious that they are not built into the local resilience arrangements in the way that some of the other partner agencies are. So there is a lot of work going on around that. There was a lot of input, but there is also some really immediate key learning that we're all very keen as partners to take forward to make sure that we have a more consistent response in future.
Thank you.
And I think I just want to add to that
wanted to come
before
back,
Pauline comes back in.
Can I?
Look, we're never going to stop it. We need a societal change. Whether we, and I don't mean this in a way that anyone's abdicating responsibility. As you can see, there's quite a lot of work going on underneath it. We need to redouble our efforts. You know, whether it's schools exclusion, where it's parenting, where it's understanding what knives are in your household, whether it's whether I equip policing with more knife wands. Someone also pointing out to me as I was talking to an officer being in the medical city, and then they moved to ceramics. There's all sorts of there's one-upmanship that kind of continues there. The bit that we collectively have got to do is a terrible tragedy. There's been some really good joint working and some valuable lessons that we hope we never need again, but sadly I fear that we will. But there is some bits that we've got to do, and in a meeting that myself and Nikki, I mean also with the chief, we were talking about some of the work he did in Manchester when he was there around kind of Mothers Against Guns and something like that. I only mention it not to say we need to learn some stuff about that. Is actually we need to make it socially unacceptable for kids to carry knives, and that means society to come together. So we are going to be working on sort of what can we do in that kind of broader piece of work. It's in no way to kind of say that there isn't more. We bought knife arches, we bought, like I said, better equipment in terms of doing it, bits in terms of going into school, but it still keeps happening. And I'm not trying to draw a parallel, but as a consequence, society across the world seems to be more angry, more distraught as a consequence of COVID. You see it in the number of kind of gun incidents, the young people taking their lives all over the world. I was reading about some pop star in Korea. So there are some significant challenges, whether that be as a consequence of social media, games and stuff like that. It's going to require some joined up stuff. We're up for playing our part, but also say in terms of councils, government, some bits that we've actually got to do. And that then is also not going, ooh, you didn't play your part. And I know no one's saying that today, but actually it's important how that we all lean in to participate in whatever way we can and support.
Pauline, you wanted to come back for...
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks for that, Nikki. And I am very much aware of the work that's been going on with the schools and things like that. But my point was a plan of action in terms of being out there in the community, because it was where like all the flowers and things like that was. That's where all the young people were. And when I was talking to them, they really did not know what to do with themselves, right? And they said that they didn't know the young person. They may have seen him in the community, but they're just feeling so devastated, right? And a group of them was standing there. It was a perfect time to kind of do some positive interactive work with them. So I'm talking about outside of the institutions, outside of schools, right? Whether it's within the 48 hours. Do you see what I mean? What presence can we have there in terms of making sure that that support is on the ground there, ready and waiting for them? Yeah. So it's not about, I know that positive work's going on, but actually there is a gap. And we need to be looking at those gaps and filling it because it is necessary.
I think, to be fair, there were people out in the community over the weekend. They may not have been present at that point in time. I appreciate we always look to build as much resource as we can in there. I do fully appreciate, because I know that my staff acknowledged the lack of the kind of adriftness of a lot of those young people. And again, I think some of that could have been mitigated had they been in school for those 2 days beforehand.
I think Councillor Strachan would like to come in on this before we move
Yes,
on.
thank you, Chair. I should declare an interest. My two granddaughters went to the same primary school as the man who died, the young man who died. And one of them was in the same class of the primary school, and one of them is in the same class as the young man who died at this Kingsdorf Secondary School or Comprehensive School. They've taken it very hard. They keep talking about it, and it's not easy, especially for the one who is in the same class as the young man who died. You know, so it's pretty close to home. There are other things I would talk to the commissioner about, which I don't want to mention because this is live. But I just thought I'd let people know that it is really close to home, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you very much.
Thank you. But I've got a couple of other people before you need to. Councillor Smith, you wanted to.
No, I shall be super brief. So thank you for your report. It's great to get it out in the open. I have the privilege of knowing quite a lot of what's going on already. So thank you for that. On the ID scanning technology, I'd encourage anybody, if you get the chance. I mean, I've not experienced the nightlife in Northampton for many moons. So I went out with Stephen's team, I think. Absolutely, yeah. But yeah, I'd encourage anyone on that. So yeah, thank you for the invitation for that. And just Mrs. Shields, you mentioned the raising the awareness. Something that we've done in the West, and I think it might be worth doing in the North, is distributing the Flare app cards to all the councillors. Because that seems to work really well. In fact, just before our meeting started, I had another email come through from one of the councillors saying, "Can I have some more cards?" So that was a good one. And just on that night, we did out on the town. Without one beer passing our lips, we were out with our chair of licensing as well, and that was a useful one. So just a bit of, I guess, learned experience now, something that the North might benefit as well. So that's all from me. Thank you.
You know, we used to do that under the previous legacy councillors, certainly. Mrs. Shields.
Yes, Nikki, talking about the previous question that was raised, will it be, do you think, a good exercise to conduct drill? So like fire in a building, you have drill, you know, today is Monday, the alarm is going to be on. And so you have everybody out of the building, that kind of exercise, but aiming at if you have such a crime, then people know what to do in that event. Don't you think that it would remove the issue that was highlighting by Pauline?
I think some of the kind of thoughts around what would be within that, if we were to do such a thing, would be in the crisis management pack that we are planning to pull together. I think in reality, us convening the drills on behalf of schools is probably impractical. There are a lot of them. That's not to say that we couldn't encourage schools and their staff to do their own drill type exercises as part of a teacher training day. It's certainly the intention that once we have a crisis management pack available, that we look to put on a couple of half-day conferences or something like that for school-based staff in particular, designated safeguarding leads and people like that. So so that actually we can have some of those conversations around these incidents and how we manage them. So I think organising drills from our perspective is probably not one for us, but I think making sure that schools have the information to do them for themselves, and that we're able to have that broader discussion with schools. And I mean, we did do a number of years ago, some safeguarding board conferences specifically for schools. This would be a really good topic to replicate that for.
The thing I was thinking of, this package that you are going to design, is that the idea to standardize all across the school in Northamptonshire?
Unfortunately, we can never guarantee that things will be fully rolled out in a standard way, because schools are all independent organisations, and the head teachers do have the right to take the decisions themselves for the school that they manage. But the intention is that there will be a standard pack that is available, and key contacts that people can contact in the event of an incident to get advice, guidance on how to use and implement the pack, and to work with other public sector gold commanders on that particular incident. So yes, the pack will be standard, and the intention is that it will be available to all schools in the county, but we can't guarantee how they might roll it out.
My opinion, this standard practice that you implement for safeguarding the children are crucial, and I think you should make a lot of publicity about it, so like that the school can actually partake into that decision.
Okay, Councillor Maxwell.
Well, something that happened a week before last, actually, was, which you might not have been aware of, but about 9 children underneath the car park in Astor in Rushden decided to trample all over this car while the police person was upstairs dealing with an instance in there, in the actual shop. Now, the thing about stamping all over the car, running all over it and everything in the car, surely what should have happened is that these children should personally, this is my view, should have been spoken to about the damage they'd done to the car. But the issue is that children go around in groups, they don't necessarily go around singly. And it's like, it's fun, we can do this. It doesn't matter who's going to pick up the bill, etc. But you might then say the school should be picking up everything, whether it be in school, out of school, whatever it may be. It's impossible to do that. And I think you must be aware of the fact that schools are now academies, and they decide how they're going to run it.
You're right. I'm not aware of the individual incidents, and it's always dangerous as a strategic authority to delve down in them. Bearing in mind how many 999 calls and 101s we have every day, I could spend my life reading the reports, or we can kind of look at in terms of the response. I really have some sympathy for the challenges that schools face, because actually whenever there's a challenge kind of in society, it kind of often says, can a school deal with this? Well, in the end, schools cannot make up for, society, good, bad, parenting, undue influences. Society is a kind of complex organism, if you like, and the only way we can address some of these is continue to work together. We genuinely, doing what we can to make sure that we raise focus of it. We had the Knife Angel on all the kind of engagement. We're running with kind of NN off the streets to roll out more and more kind of bleed kits in terms to reduce the bit, God forbid, that you're if someone is. We're working in terms of amnesty bins to kind of put them in. So there is a kind of a comprehensive package as education in terms of schools, but actually in the end, we've got to work together across society to kind of deal with that. And actually, it is a tragedy that people kind of go, you know, at the end of the day, school is a place of learning. It's supposed to be where they're educated. It's not there to fix the society, you know, societal ills. That's probably a good segue to the next one, isn't it, Mr. Chairman?
As I said earlier on, you know, it's a very comprehensive report. I'd just like to pick up on one or two things that I think perhaps you might come back to us another time. One is the new serious violence duty, which you seem to be sort of looking into, you know, what impacts it has, etc. And the other one was the delay in the criminal justice system. I know you're, you know, working on that, and so I just wonder if perhaps there are two quite sort of large topics. I mean, there are a lot of topics in this report that we haven't dealt with, and you know, some that you could perhaps bring back to us another time when you've got a little bit further to understand the implications of those.
Thank you. I would welcome bringing the, it's your agenda, not mine. I would welcome us bringing to you a report on the serious violence strategy. I'm struggling with my words, I know. Serious violence duty, and actually, but it would be quite useful to actually say, to reassure you of some of the joint work that's going on, because it's a unique one where I'm the recipient of the money. I have no legal duty to deliver it, but I hold everyone account to doing it. What a wonderful position, actually. But we're very much in terms of leaning in a partnership, even to the point of recruitment, to make sure that we've got a coordinator to deliver on it. But I would ask that maybe you include that on the next agenda, because we'd love to come and talk about that.
I'm sure James would do that. Yeah. And the other thing is that I was pleased to see the work that's going on with the fire service to do with HMOs. And I just wondered, I'm sure they probably explained this when they came and spoke to us about it before. I presume that includes things like care homes where vulnerable people might be living. I think they probably include that as well. I don't know if you know that answer.
HMOs are not, you know, HMO is different from a care home. A care home, because of a risk to life, is a statutory place that needs to have kind of sufficient care and inspections.
Is that a fire?
That does sound like a fire drill. That does sound like a drill.
I think we need to...
You need to vacate and disperse from the general area for around 20 minutes or so, and then...
Mrs. King, the lengths you've gone to that sounds like a proper one, doesn't it? We might not be back. I'll take my papers if you want to carry on.